Holly, I am so happy to have you today.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. Thanks for coming over and talking to me. This is fun.
I'm so excited. So the first question I'm going to ask is, how did you get into the business? What attracted you to the business?
Well, that goes back a long way. When I was growing up in Texas, my father and his business partner decided that they wanted to invest in a Broadway show. And so two Texas businessmen had no idea how to do that. And so they called Price Waterhouse and they said, how do we invest in a Broadway show? And so Price Waterhouse set them up some backers auditions in New York City.
Oh my God.
And so they went to this backers audition, and there's Charles Strauss playing the piano and singing, and it was Bye Bye Birdie. And my father and his business partner, Slade Brown, got in the cab to go back to the airport, and they kind of looked at each other and went, wow, that sounded pretty good. Let's turn the cab around and go back and do that show. And they did, and it's really what got Bye Bye Birdie made, was their investment in the show.
Wow, that's
and
lovely.
So I was probably about 10. And I sort of lived it from afar. My father had always directed the little theater musicals in this town in Texas that we grew up in. And then I went to the drama department, the University of Texas Drama Department, and I graduated from there. I moved to New York, and a group of Texans friends, decided to form a theater company in New York. And we all took on different jobs. And the job fell to me to get the cast together.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't, of course, have any other, I didn't know anything, could ever be a job in casting, but it just fell to me, and I liked it. And I was like, okay, I kind of think that this is, more interesting for me. I did some acting in the theater as well, but I also started gravitating towards really enjoying getting the cast together. And I married a young actor at the time, and his mother is a Tony Award-winning actress in New York. And so I said to her, I think I would like to get into casting. And she just happened to be doing an off-Broadway show at a theater company there called the Manhattan Punchline. And she asked the guys who were running the place, hey, can my daughter-in-law come in and be the casting director? And they went, sure. So for $25 a show, I basically learned it on my own. I knew nothing. I just figured it out. So I never trained to be a casting director. I never trained under anyone. As my sister laughs, I had business cards made. And I basically, learned at the Manhattan Punchline how to send out a breakdown to agents and how to, so I was just completely self-taught, and the Manhattan Punchline was a fantastic way to do that, and
that's amazing.
It was really great, and I met an amazing casting director at that time, Jason Lapadura, who is one of my oldest friends, and his longtime companion was doing the publicity at Manhattan Punchline. And so I met Jason, and Jason's career as a casting director was really starting to take off at the time. And he was getting much more work than he could handle. And so he started throwing some work my way, mainly the Los Angeles casting directors who would come out to New York for like a week to search for a pilot, or a week on a movie, or a week on a movie of the week. They would hire me to, get everything together for them in New York, and then they would come in for a week, and I just worked with just some amazing casting directors. I mean, Eugene Blythe and Molly LaPata and Marcia Ross and Judith Weiner, and it was just like amazing. So I became kind of like, for almost a year, the person who was like doing everything in New York. And so one of those casting directors was Gail Eisenstadt, who's no longer with us. She died many years ago. But she came to town, and I was working on a mini-series with her, and there was a CBS was looking for a director of casting in New York to head up their casting department. And Jean Guest, Christopher Guest's mother, was head of CBS at the time. And so Gail Eisenstadt called Jean Guest and said, you should hire Holly Powell in New York. And so Jean flew out, and I thought I was actually interviewing for the job, but she actually had assistants waiting for me to interview out in the lobby, and I was like, oh, you mean I'm hired? So it was just, unbelievable that I found myself thrust into, this big job, I thought at the time. I had also been working in New York with Donna Isaacson, who's head casting now at Fox Features, and John Lyons, who has gone off to be this incredible producer, and Isaacson Lyons Casting, and we were casting a show called Spencer for Hire, that Robert York was starring in. So I was doing that for them. We did Raising Arizona, so it was some great stuff. So I had just started working for them for several months when CBS hired me. So, and it was my job at CBS to put all actors on tape and ship it off to Los Angeles, especially for pilot season. And so I learned so much about the camera in the room, a video camera in the room, and putting an actor on tape, and how sometimes auditions don't translate well onto videotape, because videotape really flattens you out. And the mic, you're not always mic'd correctly. The mic is often in the camera. So I had to learn so much about lighting, and because the first week I worked there, I was in the room with the actors, and they were great in the room with me, and then I would watch the videotapes back and go, oh my God, these are horrible. They're flat, they're boring. What do I do? So I had to, again, kind of just figure it all out on my own of if I'm going to be shipping these tapes off to Los Angeles, I need them to, look good, and I also wanted to try to help contribute to the casting process, obviously.
I want to ask you a question, just to jump in on that. What do you think makes somebody great in the room but boring on video?
It's energy. I have figured out over the years that you can't audition for a part the way you're going to film it. Because when you're filming it, you have the camera right there in the face. You're boomed, But what happens when the video camera is over there, and the mic is over in the camera, and you're talking like this, and the camera's right in your face because you don't want to push too much, it's not translating onto the video camera, and so it's energy.
I actually always tell my actors that when you audition, you have to be here, but when you're going to film it, they're going to pull you back.
Exactly. I always say,
but that was
you cannot
something
audition for it the way you're going to film it. It is not film acting.
Right.
It's auditioning.
Exactly. And that's something that I knew as an actor, because I would book a feature, and then they would always go, less. I go, okay,
and a lot of actors don't know that. And I found a lot of actors, interestingly enough, out of New York who've done theater a lot are the ones who really don't understand it, because people have said, oh, you got to pull it back, you got to pull it back, you got to pull it back. And so they get, oh, I'm auditioning for television and film, and okay, I've been told I have to pull it back, and so I'm going to be really real and down here. But it's not translating in an audition room.
What I've also noticed is and something that I learned when I was a young actor is that when people say do less, you start doing nothing. And that's boring.
It's boring. And that's exactly what happens. And I also found that when an actor would sit that their energy would go into the chair. So I often found, if it was appropriate for the scene, that it was much better for an actor to stand when doing a taped audition, especially if it's half-hour comedy. Because
makes sense.
It's that tone and it's that energy. But if you're sitting in the chair, I remember casting something a few years back that was a half-hour comedy, and in my producer's office there was this. Oh, it was the Eve's show, and there was this big comfy chair in the producer's office, and we were always casting boyfriends for Eve, right? And so these gorgeous, tall guys would walk into the room, and they'd sit in this comfy chair, right, and their knees would come all the way up to their ear, and they'd be sitting there, and my producer was like, why isn't anybody funny? Why isn't anybody funny? I know these guys, I watched their tapes, I've seen their, and finally, really, a couple of weeks went by, and I went, it's the chair. Get the chair out of here. I need a hard, chair, or stand. Just get them up on their feet. And then it was working because it was about energy. It wasn't like, don't sit and get comfy in a chair and try to do a good comedy audition. It just doesn't work, you know.
Exactly.
So I learned a lot over the years about that with the camera. But what happened after about a year in New York is that there was a change at the top, and Lisa Freiberger took over the casting department, and so Rick Jacobs was also, and he wanted to move to New York, and he wanted my job, and so Lisa said, well, Holly, you want to come out to LA and head up the movie miniseries department, which is what I did. And then she basically said, okay, you got a week to decide, and I was like, okay. So in a week, I had moved to Los Angeles and was right over here at CBS Radford, and so that was fascinating because it was literally, I was covering the movie and miniseries department, and that was in the 80s when we actually had movies of the week and miniseries.
I remember those.
3 movie of the week nights at CBS in those days. 3 nights a week we had a movie of the week on the air. I mean, it was just unbelievable what happened in the 80s. Now, they're very few and far between.